1 Peter 4, 7 to 11. The end of all things is near. Therefore be alert and of sober mind so that you may pray. Above all, love each other deeply because love covers a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each of you should use whatever gifts you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. All right, you guys should know who this picture is. The next guy is Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra sung a song, and it starts similar to the beginning of our scripture reading. And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. Apparently, when he came to retire, they wrote this song for him. And it was about his retirement. And in the song, of course, we all know, or you will probably all know, Frank Sinatra, My Way. He reflects on his life. And he says, and now and the end is near, and now I face the final curtain. And he goes on from there. He's looking back over his career, and he says, I've done it all my way. I've done everything my way. I did it my way. All of it, my way. But if we took the time to reflect on our lives and say that the end is near, would there be things that we would change? Or would it, if you, for instance, found out that for sure you had 12 months to live? Like if tomorrow someone said to you, I know the date of your death, you've got 12 months from today. How would that impact the way you did things? How would that change your life? Would you change it all? Would you change anything? Like maybe we're living great, we don't need to change, but would the end being near change the way you did things today? Would you change the way you think about things? Would it change how you thought about stuff? Would you think, oh, my time's running out, I need to get out there and do lots of things? Or would you think, I need to savor every moment and do things, take it slowly and do things, I've only got a year left, I need to take it slowly? Would it change your relationships? Would you just, I don't know, quit on your marriage and go out and have as many flings as possible so that you enjoyed yourself for your last year? Or would you go around and say sorry to everyone you have ever hurt and go and heal as many relationships as possible? Would that be what you'd do if the end was near, if your time was short? Would it change the way you used your money? Would you think, okay, well, I've got so much money, I want to make sure that on the day I die, the last dollar goes into the coin slot and I have nothing right at the end? My grandfather thought like that. Or would you think, okay, I've got to accumulate as much as I can and pass it on to my children. I've only got 12 months left. I want to make sure they've got as much as possible. How would you think if the end was near? How would you react? How would you change? What would you do with your time? What would you do with your time? Would you spend it healing relationships, saving money? Would you go out and just don't care about time, party on hard, stay up till all hours, you're going to die anyway, it doesn't matter? Would you savor every moment? They're the sort of things the end being near could push you to do. You could be pushed to change the way you live now. The way we live now kind of assumes that tomorrow will be there. But what if it's not? What if the end is near? And this is the topic of what Peter says. Peter's saying the end is coming. The end is near. And he gives us a bunch of things that we need to do because the end is coming. The reality, the end is coming, that there is going to be some day when we end this life and Jesus will come back and God will judge us. The reality of that day should influence everything we do. It should be a major influence on how we live life now. So he gives us a few points of how we should change and live our lives now. And the first one is we need to be alert and of sober mind. And these two words basically mean be sober, so not drunk. So that's when you're drunk. I don't know if any of you have been drunk in your lifetime. I have. You kind of lose your head a little bit. You do things that you may not normally do. You are a lot freer with your conversation. I think the old saying is, a sober man's secrets are a drunk man's conversation, or woman. We're not discriminating. So be alert. The first word alert means don't be of sound mind. Be awake. Don't be like you're drunk and half in a stupor. And of sober mind means controlled. Don't go out of control. I don't know if you've ever been late. Everyone's been late at some stage. And when you get late, I've done this. If you haven't, I have definitely done it. When you get late, you kind of rush. You start to lose control a little bit. And littler things annoy you. Like if you're driving in your car and someone's doing 5k below the speed limit and you're running late, you're doing 10k above the speed limit and they're holding you up, you start to get a little bit of road rage happening. Maybe I'm just speaking for me, but you can get a bit frustrated. Get out of my way, I need to get there. And you get a bit out of control. The pressure of the situation gets you a little bit out of control. You may not be as patient as you normally are. You may not do things as in control as you normally are when the pressure is on. And this is what Peter is saying. He's saying the end is coming. It's near. Don't let the pressure of that get you out of control. Rather be controlled and pray. Be within a normal mindset. Don't go flipping off doing crazy stuff. You've got to be in control so that you may pray and pray properly, obviously. So that's the first thing. The end is coming. Therefore, be alert and sober. Be in control and pray. Don't let the pressure get to you. Don't flip off the handle. Don't do those sort of things. Be in control. Don't be like a drunk person and crazy with things. Be in control and pray. The next thing he says is, because the end is coming, because the end is near, you're to love each other deeply, and because love covers a multitude of sins. And the word for love is obviously agape, and each other, that's pretty self-explanatory. The word deeply means a full stretch. Do it full on, as hard as you can. Love as hard as you can. Love at full stretch. Because love covers a multitude of sins. And there's, whose sins does it cover is the question, I suppose, that arises out of this. Is it the person who's loving, the sins are covered, or is it the person who is loved, the sins are covered? I think that the basic answer is the person who is loved. And the idea behind it, I think, is that someone would be out of control a little bit. Someone would do something that's considered a sin, like get angry at you for something. Now, we've got a choice to make then. Do we love them at full stretch and reflect back to them good? Or do we get upset at them and they got angry at me for no reason and justify ourselves? The idea of loving each other deeply is that we would reflect back good and in that way cover the sin of anger. It's finished. It's done with. It doesn't affect anyone else. It's just, it affected you, yes, but you returned good. And this is spoken of, obviously, in other parts of the Bible. Paul says, don't return evil for evil, but overcome evil by returning good for evil. It's hard, but that is what Peter's saying. The end is near. This is the way we should live in this time, with this reality that the end is coming. that we will be judged one day, the idea of not reflecting back a sin, but rather reflecting back blessing and good to someone, and that covers a multitude of sins. Love each other at full stretch, not half-hearted, full on. Give it all to love each other. It's so important to love each other, each one of us. And we are all guilty of not doing it. But Peter is saying the end is coming, therefore you be sober, control your mind and pray, and then you love everybody as hard as you can, full stretch, going absolutely as hard as you can, loving them, giving yourself for them, returning blessing for evil. The third thing he says is offer hospitality. Now this is probably back in their day when he was talking about this. If he traveled around to churches, there wasn't a motel, close by everywhere that they went. Motels weren't as prolific as they are today. So he needed people to offer hospitality. He had to stay at people's places. So if the people in the church weren't hospitable, then he was kind of open to the elements and had to try and find somewhere to stay. Whereas if everyone in the church was offering hospitality, he would have a place to stay. And so hospitality was a much bigger deal back then. Today, we got a motel everywhere. We have vehicles. We don't need to have people's hospitality as much. We don't need it. It doesn't mean it's not valuable. For us today, we know that when we eat together, that relationships get stronger. Relationships between people get much stronger when we eat together and spend time together. And so it's still important to offer hospitality. It's still important for us to invite each other to each other's places and enjoy each other's company and spend time eating together as part of our fellowship of the church. And you're supposed to do it without grumbling. Obviously, Peter had a few people back in his day that would be, you can come and stay at my place, but I don't really want you. We're not supposed to be like that. We're to offer hospitality. So Peter's saying, because the end day is near, you've got to be sober in your mind. You've got to keep it together and pray. You've got to love full stretch, absolutely as hard as you can. And you've got to offer hospitality to people. Be hospitable and do it without grumbling. And the final thing he says is you've got to use your gift. God has given everyone gifts. The end is near. Therefore, the gift that God has given you, whatever you've received, you're supposed to use. You've got to use it for the benefit of other people, not yourself. So if it happens you've got musical gift or whatever, you don't get up here and sing or play or lead worship because you get something out of it. You don't do that. You serve others. You're there to serve others with your gifts. And in serving others, we're a faithful steward of God, of God's grace. And so Peter says if you're preaching, if anyone speaks, they should do it as if one who speaks the very words of God. That's got a bit of responsibility to it. If you're going to say something from the front, you've got to be like God has. You're taking on quite a responsibility. You've got to be careful of your words. You've got to be careful of your words. If someone serves, they should do it with the strength God provides. The idea, again, is God has given you these things. He's given you a responsibility, or given us a responsibility to serve Him and other people with gifts. And we need to take that seriously. You can't sit around and do very little in your life or very little in your church. The idea is that we should all be using whatever gift we have. And we've all got some kind of gift. Some kind of gift. Everyone has a gift. And it's up to us whether we use that or not. But Peter is saying the end is near, therefore use your gift to serve others. Don't sit on it. Don't use it to serve yourself. You've got a responsibility before God to do it well and for other people. So the end is near. I don't know if people sit down and if you guys have sat down and thought about the end coming for you. I do. I've thought about, what's going to happen in the end. If my end is quick, like my father died at 67. At that rate, I've only got about 17 years left. If I die when my dad died, my grandfather on my mother's side died in his 50s. So I might only have within 10 years left. You just don't know. The end is near. That should influence our behaviour. My behaviour should be influenced by the reality of the end is near. I shouldn't be just not caring. I've got a responsibility. And I've got a responsibility to be controlled, to stay alert in my mind and pray. Prayer is important. We've got a responsibility because the end is near to be controlled and pray. Praying's not something that's, inconsequential. Praying's something that's really important. The end is near. Therefore, love everyone. It is so hard for humans. I don't know why this is. It just is. You see it. I see it in my kids. The fact that as soon as someone does something bad to them, they want to get them back. The idea of vengeance is just ingrained in us. Movies are made out of it. It's the air we breathe, just about. That everyone is to get back when someone does something bad to them. They owe it. It's owe it to me to be vindicated. Vengeance. Peter's saying, no, the end is near. You don't do that. You actually love someone and cover over that sin. Stop it in its tracks. Overcome it, as Paul would say, with good. The end is near. That means we have to do that kind of thing. And that's huge for us. If you took that away from today's sermon and you tried to do it, my goodness, would that transform a church if everyone loved deeply? There'd be no fights. As soon as someone started to do something wrong, people would be just doing good back, stopping it in its tracks. There'd be no fights with each other. Love deeply because the end is near. Be hospitable. I struggle with this because it takes time. To be honest, after a day working, coming home to kids, screaming and yelling, fighting with each other. They need to love each other deeply, I tell you. Screaming and fighting with each other. I don't feel like having people over. I don't even feel like going over to people's places. But Peter says hospitality is so important. Being hospitable and do it without grumbling. Invite people over. Get involved in their lives. Bless them. End is near. Let's be hospitable. The end is near. Let's use our gifts faithfully. We've got a responsibility to use our gifts. Every gift that you've been given has been given from God. Use it for the benefit of others to do it faithfully. I don't know how the end impacts you. For some, it might seem close. For others, it might seem a long way away. I think the reality is it can come at any time. And we need to live in a way that would be honouring to God because our end is coming. The judgment is coming. Whether it be a long way in earth years or a short time in earth years, it's coming. And that should impact how we live. And we need to live in accordance to the Bible. What Peter is saying here is you've got to love. You've got to be alert and sober. You've got to be hospitable and you've got to use your gifts. That's the kind of living that has taken into the account the end is coming. And if we're not doing that, then we need to change. We need to say, okay, I need to change this to bring myself in line with living at the end, living in the end time. Let's pray.